Are you unable to get bitches? Sucks to be you. Apollo did not have this problem. In fact, he has had 38 girlfriends and 12 boyfriends in his immortal lifetime. And these are just the serious ones. I am stuck with my one boyfriend whom I love very dearly. Unfortunately, a lot of Apollo's lovers did not have very happy endings, or beginnings, or middles. Let's talk about them. Apollo met Cassandra as he was helping build the Trojan walls. She was the daughter of King Priam and Queen Hecuba. Apollo was immediately stricken by her beauty and started talking with her. Apollo and Cassandra hit it off. She was beautiful and he was a god. Perfect combination. They spent many hours together on the beach, the fields and the forests, talking about mortal and immortal struggles alike. Apollo played her music, she told him poems. During one of these days, Apollo promised that if they got married, he would make her immortal and she would get the gift of prophecy. A choice in marriage? In ancient Greece? That's a point for Apollo. She was very enticed by this idea and immediately agreed. Apollo gave her the gift of prophecy, but he would make her immortal during their wedding. With this gift already in her pocket, she started ghosting Apollo. This was thankfully not that hard in that time, since he couldn't call or track her location anyway. Apollo got mad and tried to take away her gift, but this was no longer possible. So he gave her another one. The gift of prophecy stayed, but he just added on to it. She would be able to foresee the future, but all people she told it to would not believe her. Yeah, let's take that point away, that was not very nice. Apollo went back to Olympus and met a nymph. Daphne, she introduced herself. She was a naiad, a spirit of water. Apollo was stricken. Literally, he was stricken with an arrow by Eros, god of romantic love, to fall in love with Daphne. Apollo went up to her and tried to get her to love him back, but she refused. She wanted to be a free nymph, not tied down to any god. Apollo did not take no for an answer. Let's take 1 point away for that. And chased her high and low. No matter where she went, Apollo was not far behind. Like a true redditor, running after a woman who smiled at him once. Eventually, Daphne came to a cliff. There was no way to go but down, and Apollo was right behind her. Right before he could get to her, she prayed to her father, the river god Peneus, who changed her into a laurel tree. As Daphne changed, Apollo's spell was broken. He was so incredibly sad and ashamed about what he had done, he crafted a laurel wreath out of Daphne's leaves, and made sure that every mortal who won a game got such a wreath. All winners would get what he had lost. Pretty emo, but honestly, he deserves a point for that. Next up is Carnis. Carnis was a seer and the son of Europa, a mortal woman who Apollo helped raise, so it was sort of his adoptive grandson. It's one of the lesser weird relationships, sadly. Carnis and Apollo met because Apollo taught him divination. Helping others? Another point! He was part of the Heraclitus, who were the numerous descendants of the hero turned god Heracles. One day, Hippotes, one of the Dorian kings, came to Carnis for a prophecy. Carnis gave him what he asked for, but the Hippotes found it to be too obscure, so he killed Carnis. Which is very rude, considering Carnis was still just a student. Apollo got word of this and struck the Dorian kings with a plague. Yeah, let's take the point away. Corporal punishment is not the way to go. The Dorian kings went to another seer, since Carnis was, dead, and heard that Apollo had given them this plague in punishment of what Hippotes had done. The Dorian kings banished Hippotes and started a cult called Apollo Carneus. Starting a cult deserves a point, everyone should try it. After this, Apollo was lonely once again, and went back to search for love. He took after his father, so it seems. He landed on Thessaly and found Cornis, a beautiful princess. After a passionate night together, she became pregnant. Apollo was over the moon, or, well, sun, his first child! Because Apollo was Zeus' second-hand man, and he recently took over driving the Sun Chariot, he was a very busy man, but all his free time was spent with Cornis and their unborn baby. One day, Apollo didn't have time to visit, so he sent his sister, Artemis, to visit Cornis and check up on how she was doing. Definitely a point for Apollo. As Artemis stepped into Cornis' house, she heard an unfamiliar voice, a man. She went into the bedroom and saw Cornis in bed with a mortal named Ischys. She became outraged for her brother and killed Cornis on the spot. I mean, it's the same. Hearing this, Apollo raced to her, trying to save his girlfriend and unborn baby. Cornis was already dead, but the baby still had a chance. Apollo turned him sort of immortal and named him Asclepius. He became the god of medicine. Point for Apollo once more, good job saving a baby. Even though Apollo was thankful for Artemis' actions, he was still filled with grief. That is until he met Hera. And real quick, Researching this was awful. She was either named Hyria or Thyria, and there were like 6 Thyrias and 3 Hyrias? How the hell am I supposed to find the right one? Anyway, I tried. Apollo and Hyria had a son, Cycnus. Ha! Kick these nuts! Cycnus was a troubled youth, and spent most of his time up to no good. Eventually, all his friends left him, except one, Phyleus. Phyleus was enamored by Cycnus, and in his devotion, never left him. Cycnus was unfazed by this, and I guess he wanted to be lonely, because he set Phyleus up for 3 impossible tasks. The first task was that Phyleus had to kill a lion that was threatening their neighborhood without any weapons. Phyleus drank an obscene amount of wine, as most teens do, and then vomited it up at the place the lion would rest. The lion ate this and became drunk. This made it possible for Phyleus to strangle it to death with his clothes. In the second task, Phyleus had to catch 2 man-sized eagles, posing another threat. When an eagle dropped a dead hare on the ground, he smeared himself with his blood and pretended to be dead. I do love my boyfriend, but I would not smear my body with hare's blood for him, honestly. But maybe I'm in the wrong for that. When the vultures started attacking him, he caught them and brought them to Cycnus. Cycnus was still not impressed and told his toy to bring a bull to the altar of Zeus, again with his bare hands. Phyleus had no clue how to do this, so he prayed to Heracles, who told him to go to a specific field where 2 bulls were fighting. When one of the bulls went down, he grabbed its legs and brought it to the altar of Zeus. Heracles forbade Phyleus from accepting any more orders from Cycnus, which is fair. When Cycnus heard of this, he was so disgraced, he committed suicide, like this wasn't all his fault. Apollo saw him jump off of a cliff above a lake and turn him into a swan so his son would live. Unfortunately, his mother, Hyria, saw this too, and she was so sad that her son would do this, she threw herself into the lake. Apollo, again, had to turn her into a swan to save her. Apollo saved his girlfriend and son? That definitely deserves a point. Hyria might not be dead, but she was now a swan, and swans are dicks, so he had to find a new partner. He spent a while on his own before he saw a young man at work. Apollo raced down from the heavens and fell on his knees before a Spartan man. Hyacinthus was his name. Yes, like the flower. No, it's apparently not the same flower? I don't know, I guess they had a different one. Apollo fell deeply in love with Hyacinthus, spending all his free time with him and even abandoning his city of Delphi to be with him more. Apollo was not the only god to have fallen in love with Hyacinthus. Zephyrus, god of the western wind, and Boreas, god of the northern wind, because every wind direction needed a god for some reason, had also taken a liking to Hyacinthus. Also a mortal man named Thamaris, but who cares about mortals? Hyacinthus kept on rejecting the other 2 gods, and Boreas quickly backed off. Zephyrus didn't. Zephyrus went to Apollo to tell him to back off. Apollo refused. He told him they would need to let Hyacinthus choose. He will choose me, you know. Apollo, certain of Hyacinthus' love, agreed. Point to him for giving his lover a choice. Zephyrus and Apollo both asked Hyacinthus on a date for the upcoming weekend. Hyacinthus had the choice between the god he had spent the last couple weeks being in love with, or the god he had rejected numerous times. Must have been a hard choice. That weekend, Apollo and Hyacinthus went discus throwing, something that was apparently a normal date night in ancient Greece. As Apollo threw the discus, the wind changed. Who could have done that? The discus turned in the air and flew into Hyacinthus' head. That's not very nice. Point away from Zephyrus. As Hyacinthus bled out on the grass, Apollo tried everything to save him. He gave him ambrosia, tried to ask his son Asclepius for help, he tried to invoke his own godhood into him, but it would not help. Hyacinthus died on the spot. Cute date idea! Take your lover discus throwing and fucking kill him! Apollo was heartbroken. He even went to the Fates themselves and begged them to turn him mortal so he could join his beloved in the underworld, but they refused. Committing suicide over a lover is not the way to go, Apollo. Point away. Normally, this is where the myth ends. Apollo gets another lover and moves on. But recently, like this year, a chair has been found, depicting Hyacinthus being brought back from the underworld and Artemis bringing him up to the heavens to make him immortal and reunite with Apollo once more. I like this better, so I'm making it canon now, and you can't stop me. Okay, bear with me for the next one, please. The next lover is Psamathe. She was the princess of Argos. She and Apollo had a child named either Konos or Linus. Psamathe hid the pregnancy, which I don't get because who the fuck wouldn't want a kid with this hottie, but fine. She abandoned the child at birth to be raised by a shepherd, but the shepherd's dog tore it apart when he lost the kid out of his eye for a second. When the king of Argos, Critopus, got word of this, he ordered Psamathe to be killed. Apollo did not like this, even though she abandoned their child, point away, so he sent out a plague to the Argives. He ordered a festival to honor Psamathe and Konos/Linus. He kept the plague though, until the king was forced to find the city of Tripodecium and live out the rest of his days there. Let's take another point away for not removing a plague when a king does exactly as asked. In another version, Psamathe gives Konos/Linus to the dogs herself and he gets torn apart. She still gets killed, but this time Apollo sends either the goddess of punishment, Puan or Puna, to the city to steal children away in their sleep, and when the hero Cerberus kills her, even though she's a goddess, does he send the plague. Okay, in again other versions, Puna or Puan is a monster called Puna, Puan or Care, and later sources say she is one of the Lamai. There are also sources saying Sementhi is one of the Nereids, but why would Apollo then take it out on the Argives? Anyway, the kid gets killed by dogs, the girlfriend gets killed by her father, and the Argives suffer. This myth makes me mad, so I'm taking another point away. Why? Fuck you, that's why! We have arrived at the last person we're gonna be talking about today, a boy named Cyparissus. Apollo fell in love with him and gifted him a, sometimes tame, stag. I hope to God he was tame, or what was he supposed to do with it? Cyparissus loved the stag dearly. He took it with him everywhere he went. He went hunting one day and found a sleeping stag in the forest. You probably see where this is going. Cyparissus killed the stag, and as it died in his arms, he saw it was his stag, the gift of Apollo himself. He wept and turned into a cypress tree. He maybe needs to go to a doctor because that cannot be good. Anyway, that was Apollo's unfortunate love life. I truly hope yours is better. Let's check the point total. It's decent, but I'm still disappointed in you, Apollo. Curious about the crazy story of Apollo's birth? Check out my video about the birth of the Olympian gods. Thanks for watching/listening, and I hope I'll see you back again next time.